I tried this a couple of times, but they always blocked it.
What are their actual problems? How do they talk? Who is that person?
This actually makes the difference between a good marketer and an exceptional marketer.
It comes from still being optimistic about that AI won't do everything of my job, and it makes sense for me to learn these things, but let's see.
Churning out a lot of nice secrets here.
Welcome to Let's Talk Ads. We're here to push your growth marketing tips, fun and chats. Tune in, let's rock the show.
Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Ads. My name is Andre. I am founder of Admiral Media, and with me is Marcus Burke. Marcus scaled Wave AI, a huge note-taker app, I think from like 500 to 5 million ARR in 2024, if I'm not mistaken. And he has worked with, I don't know how many apps, 30, 50, 100 apps already. He has seen basically every category of apps and has proven to be an expert in the app marketing industry. We know each other since a couple of years, have met at different events. And he also almost say invented web funnels for the app industry. You could say more about that, Marcus. When you were working in Blinkist. Today, Marcus is a freelance consultant. If I'm not mistaken from the wording, you can maybe describe yourself a little bit. Please welcome to Let's Talk Ads, Marcus.
Yeah, hi Andre. Thanks so much for the invite. I heard you had a pretty good lineup for this, so happy to be part of it. I'd like to say consultant usually. I learned in like various courses I took that freelance is always kind of tied to like an hourly rate and cheap work on Upwork, and consultant is kind of a premium thing. So I'm a consultant. Yeah, I've invented web funnels. I mean, that's a big one. I would say I worked on them when this wasn't as much of our topic yet. I've been at Blinkist from 2019 to 2021. And Blinkist was pretty big on content. So they had like web funnels, basically writing these articles about themselves. I'm sure everyone saw one of them at some point, always saying things like the app that all the intellectuals are using, or the app that was recommended by Tim Cook, these kind of things. And then basically we once had traffic to a web page and then to the App Store afterwards. And that got me kind of involved with working on this in 2019 already, which is earlier than most apps, but I know other people have been working on web funnels even before that. So I wouldn't say I invented them, but it was definitely eye-opening, especially since I came from the gaming industry where, I mean, we had desktop versions of the games and people played them and then we would send people to the web, but otherwise we didn't have like content flows or anything. So that was new to me. Also that you could charge people on web and don't have to pay Apple was new to me. So I got super interested in that quite early on. Other than that, I've been in the industry for like 13 years now. Started, as I said, in gaming, working for InnoGames, one of the big German gaming publishers, and then switched to Blinkist, worked with a couple of other subscription apps, and then moved over to consulting in 2022. So yeah, almost 3 years. Or
That's a couple of years. What's your bread and butter today as a consultant? Like, what do people hire you for mostly?
People hire me for Meta. In the end, I try to really specialize in that field. I create content on LinkedIn around it. So I try to be known for Meta, while then, of course, when I work with a client, I also do other things. I try not to do too many other ad channels, some Apple search ads maybe, but I try not to get into like Google or anything. But then for me, Meta in 2025 can only work if you have like a full funnel view and you know kind of your growth levers, you're optimizing paywalls, the full journey, just because it's not that easy anymore. You can't just set a conversion event and Meta does the rest. That's been kind of 5 years ago when that last worked, I think.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, there's a lot of more automation and so-called simplification happening in the ad accounts, but it's still so much work to be done. Some people think it's too easy to run meta campaigns, but especially in the app business, there's quite some complexity.
I always envy the D2C people that like set their purchase event and send back their card values, and then I think things are a lot more easy.
That's so true. Yeah. When you say you specialize in Meta, do clients hire you mostly for pure consulting? Like, hey, have a look here, give me tips and tricks, or do you actually execute and run campaigns for your clients?
It's a mix and it changes over time. So I try to at least have one operative client at a time so that I'm in the weeds and I need to do things and stay on top of what's going on in Ads Manager. With others, I do consulting where I like mentor the team or the founders on like what could be kind of good ways to scale the account or make it work in the first place. So it really depends on the client. I don't have like set products that I use. It really, I shape that based on what people need in the end.
Okay, interesting. And when was the first time you realized like it's Meta and I specialize in Meta and yes, I can do a TikTok or Snapchat or whatsoever, but I will make my fortune as a consultant on Meta. How did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, I always loved the channel. I've been running it really since the early days, like since 2012 when I started my career. I was working on that channel already in the gaming industry when you only had like Facebook on desktop web and you would be running right-hand side ads like next to the feed. And I really like this really got me hooked on marketing in the end, that I noticed, okay, I can be creative here, which I really like, and I can create my own like banner ads and then test what I kind of made and whether people agree that this was a creative and cool way to display things. And that really got me hooked. And when I started consulting in 2022, I first thought, okay, I need to go a bit broader because only offering one thing isn't enough. But really over time, I noticed that by specializing, I get known for this one thing. And that means that bigger clients reach out, more interesting clients reach out. I can charge higher rates. And in the end, specialization really helped me to kind of scale where my business is at today. And Meta was just historically grown the best thing for me to specialize in because I know it the best and I really enjoy doing it.
Okay, all right. Let's dive a little bit deeper into Meta. The topic today is basically hard lessons learned when scaling Meta for apps in particular. Most of the people that I'm talking with, or you see it everywhere on LinkedIn and any other channel where you follow marketing tips, it's creatives. So we hear a lot about iterative creative testing. What would be your personal outside the box approach to produce impactful creatives on a especially limited budget or timeline?
I mean, I'd say it's getting easier with AI for sure. So like that is really democratizing how you produce assets. You don't have to use stock imagery as much anymore, which tends to not work because people can tell. I wonder if we will get there with ChatGPT, that people will just know what's AI generated and won't work anymore. But definitely kind of familiarize yourself with these tools because they're really, really impactful. But to me, it all starts with like being good at understanding your audience. Ads can be very, very scrappy, like especially on socials. It's not like you need high production value stuff that looks amazing. Like in the end, you need stuff that looks like the content that any user would also post on the feed. And that's for 90% of the times, it's not that users have like a wonderful camera setup and that they're like firm when it comes to design. They just put something together quickly on their phone. They use CapCut or Canva, and those are the tools that you should also be using. And I think those are accessible for like most marketing managers. You don't even necessarily need kind of a design background or anything and need to familiarize yourself with Photoshop or like the Adobe product suite. So kind of be scrappy and like make sure you spend time on understanding your audience. That goes down to like reading your user reviews, actually talking to people that sign up for your app, like do user reviews, interviews. That's usually super, super helpful of understanding like what are their actual problems, how do they talk, who is that person. Go into the comment section of your ads, like on TikTok, on Instagram, on Facebook, like read what people say about what you're advertising there and questions they have, or also why they don't like what you're saying. And all these kind of qualitative inputs are really gonna shape the way you understand your audience and can then also advertise to it. And that's where it should start. It's not about starting at what pretty image can I make or like what headline can I put on it. In the end, it's all about what the user needs and what their desires are. And over the years, I really got more and more interested in copywriting. When I started in gaming, I felt like, yeah, whatever. My copy was just play game
Games
kind of
like-
everywhere.
Yeah.
But I think especially with like apps that have a bit more of like a higher purpose and that blend into your daily life to solve a specific problem and not just boredom, you can be much smarter about copywriting and how you in the end talk to a user in the language they would also use. So kind of having just a UGC background, like take an image of someone on the phone in a like contextual situation where your app would be used, and then layering highly relevant copy on top can work like a charm. And that's something you can produce in 10 minutes, but it means you have to do the work up front where you really dig into your audience.
Yeah, I see a lot, let's call it dirty or scrappy ads, meaning not high quality production, very often outperform things that were produced by trained designers who studied for 3-4 years in a high quality university. It's very often the ad that you couldn't always put together in Paint. Which can outperform anything else. I think there was one really, really famous example from Crocs, the shoes Crocs, which literally was a Paint ad, basically, right? So, and went viral, of course. But in general, I can totally follow this argument. When you think of those, let's say, scrappy creative hacks, can you remember something that surprisingly crushed performance?
It's usually not like one hack or something that helps, especially not these days. I mean, Meta also got more strict on like their ad guidelines and policies. So I know like back then in gaming, we had all these ads where we would be mimicking like certain UI elements. So the ad would look like it belongs to the feed and people could click somewhere, open something in Facebook.
I tried this a couple of times with a dating app, but they always blocked it.
Yeah. Back then it was possible. Like we had all these ads that looked like you had like a slider on top and you could like switch over the image, and that produced like 4x the click rates. And even though conversion was of course lower, the high click rates then told Meta, hey, scale this is good. We got like good relevancy scores. I don't think usually it's hard to get that through their review team these days, and then you don't want to mess with it too much because otherwise you're gonna get into trouble and the account can get blocked. So I'd say these days it really comes down to like what we talked about, like not hacks, but like true understanding of your audience. And then it can be so easy. Like if you find a highly relevant like thread on Reddit that explains like it really explains in an emotional way the user issue and how your app can solve it, then a screenshot of that Reddit thread can work as an ad like a charm. So that's where really it comes down to copywriting and understanding like which of these stories are the ones that many of the users are dealing with, instead of adding some like funky image or a certain UI element that then makes it better all the time.
Absolutely. You mentioned a screenshot from a Reddit feed being advertised on Meta. We basically see a trend of a drastic increase in video production on basically for every client that we're managing. Do you see the same pattern? Is it a lot of video ads nowadays for you, or is still static ads outperforming every now and then?
I try to always kind of teach people to also make statics, because I think in the end, different creative formats will scale on different placements. And like some placements are just made for video, like reels or stories is a video placement. And if you only do videos, then those will mainly run on these placements. But then other placements like the Facebook feed or also the Instagram feed still display a lot of static content. So that's where in the end, diversifying your mix makes a lot of sense. I think also for my clients, video is definitely the main format, and that does make sense because usually engagement is higher and they're much more scalable. But then making statics can be still worth it for these other placements. And in the end, they're much easier to produce from my perspective at scale. So it's definitely worth trying. And I think also, in the end, on Facebook, there's just a more mature audience that has higher willingness to pay and just deeper pockets. So therefore, it does make sense to learn how to drive traffic from there. Maybe it's not going to be as big as Instagram Reels for you because that's where kind of the majority of traffic is at these days. But still, even if it's just like 20, 15% share of your traffic coming from that source, it can be very, very powerful to drive a high return.
Absolutely. When you think of video ads, I mean, we all know ARCADs and all these AI avatar tools. If you compare these AI GC with UGC, do you see a big performance difference? Like a very clear pattern, it's always better performing when you use UGC? Or do you see a trend that AI GC actually is constantly outperforming everything?
I mean, I have a few kind of functioning winners coming from these AI tools from like Pool Day, Arcades, HeyGen, which was cool to see. But it's not like they're like outpacing the classic UGC for me and the accounts I'm working on. I think one thing that they fall short at is that they are very focused on cracking this like talking head UGC where you have a person speaking to the camera. In the end, it makes sense for them because that's where the clear need is. Like most of the creatives produced by advertisers are talking heads in that UGC format. But I think the market is quite saturated with that type of content. And in the end, the other like UGC, the way I try to kind of teach my clients is also looking at what is actual user-generated content on the platforms from that audience. Like, what does the stuff look like that a person would share on their reels if they talk about that specific problem we're trying to solve? And oftentimes that's not them talking to the camera. It's kind of, it can be faceless with just like a story or like B-roll in the background and some copy on top. It can be like text walls where they just kind of have 2 or 3 background images and then a ton of text on top where they spell things out just because they're not proficient in video editing and that was the way they can tell their story. So therefore, I don't even have like a clear comparison because mostly the other UGC I'm running is not this like talking head format that these platforms are pushing to produce.
You as a consultant, you get hired by a client. Do you come in and tell, okay, creative briefing should look different. You should do more of this. And if you put the prompt into some AI tool, you should build it like this. Is that also a job that you're doing, where you're helping?
Yeah, it is. I mean, like for my operative clients, sometimes I even bring in people to work together with on creative production, like creative strategists, freelancers. But then for any advisory clients, I kind of try to train them on being capable of scaling their creative production. And that then comes down to, in the beginning, really dissecting a few of their top performers. Why could those work? Where could they be improved? So that the client actually learns like how can I make a better video? And then they're able to either train the team with my help, or also in the end, we want to find scalable solutions to like have someone autonomously create these ads. And oftentimes that means like where I see these processes fall short is often that there's too many people involved that need to write like briefings. And then it really comes down to like so much workload just to like brief 10 different videos. But in the end, if you want to scale, you don't need 10 videos a week. You need like 100 videos a week. You need even more videos a week at some point. And it really makes sense to, from the beginning, think about like what could this look like if we want to scale it? Like, how can we build the team in a way that people can quickly access our content library? Like, more than one person can put together ads and basically take out as much of the overhead as possible. And for me, that oftentimes means bringing in like a creator, influencer type person that is able of understanding how to create a good like narrative arc in a video and an ad, but also is able to edit that ad and potentially write copy, which means you have that one person that can look at the content library and put things together. While as soon as there's more people involved and someone is the one briefing, and then there's a video editor that only executes on that but needs a detailed briefing to do so, you can do that with a couple of ads a week, but it's going to break as soon as you're going to scale. And kind of that's what we're looking into when I join a new client, like how to set up that pipeline for scale.
Okay, interesting. The approach for small to big clients seems to be very different here. When you think of a client that has maybe, I don't know, startup with $20,000 monthly budget versus $200,000 versus $2 million budget? Do you see a huge difference in terms of team structure and production pipeline, like how it should be structured in terms of briefings and these things?
I tend to work with like small to mid-sized apps at the moment, so I don't have anyone spending like 2 million a month. I'd really love to look into some of these like Eastern European powerhouses and how they are pumping out like 1,000 ads a week. I'm not sure what the process is behind this, but I think for creative production, yeah, as I said, I think it needs as little overhead as possible while still generating learnings. Like you can't write a brief and a hypothesis for each and every ad and then try to create that many of them. You can do that maybe on a concept basis, while then iteration within that happens a little bit more freely. Oftentimes the way I also see then kind of these creative strategists that I work with working is like they go into like one concept and then they pump out like 10 different iterations while working in that. And it's not like those were thought of beforehand that much. It's really just they're in the material and then they think about, oh, well, that's kind of, this scene actually looks cool, could be a good hook. Let's pull that to the front. Here's another one. Let's kind of make the product intro a bit more quicker, while in another video we make the kind of hook longer for a better narrative arc. Build some suspense before we actually show the solution. So oftentimes kind of it happens in the process that you think of how these videos work. And I think that's in the end how creativity works, and you can't put it all in a process. So it's you need to find like a good hybrid between like letting people freely ideate and be creative, while on the other hand putting some guidelines on top so that actually learnings are extracted and you have like your naming conventions in place, you have a little bit of a hypothesis, you make sure that whenever you learn something in creative testing, it's documented somewhere so that you're not testing the same things over and over.
When you dropped a couple of terms, narrative arc and stuff, it almost sounds like I have to develop movie director skills. How do you see that when? So as a performance, so most of the performance marketers I've met, they are extremely well versed in terms of numbers, analysis, tech questions, SKAd network, these things. But as soon as it comes to creative thinking, or in terms of having an idea, what could a hook look like and how could I merge this to a narrative arc and stuff, they completely drop out. How do you see the skill set developing, especially when we think of the help of ChatGPT and stuff and other AI tools? Do you think the skill set of a performance marketer needs to change, or should they specialize in either or how do you see that?
I would say, especially with AI, like learning and like applying all these more like copywriting and storytelling things is getting easier, and anyone would be able to do that. Spin up a GPT and like train it on. I usually start by downloading all my user reviews, set up a GPT for a client, and then feed in the user reviews so it knows kind of my customer language and what people like and dislike about the product.
That's a good
really
one.
good starting point. And then it knows everything about copywriting and storytelling. You just need to like once kind of figure out, okay, like what do I want it to apply? So look into kind of what are good copywriters, what could be resources about storytelling you want it to learn. And that's, I think, a good starting point to then have kind of a sparring buddy to talk to about like at creative production, and feed it with like current hooks you're using, and then ask it what could be different ones, or like how can I improve this ad. So I think that part is definitely something that's getting easier with AI, and anyone can add that to kind of their skill set. Well, I think like all the knowledge and intricacies of like app marketing and like how conversion events work, how scan works, the whole technical mess on the background, that's something that like you need to like just learn over time, and you can't just ask AI and it will tell you. And I don't think we're there yet that Meta can just have like a fully automated campaign type that delivers results where you just click on set up Advantage Plus and then it goes and everything works. So it's good if you have the experience there, and then you can layer on anything copywriting and creative with AI, I think.
I would agree. Yeah. I mean, where I may disagree a little bit is the saying that anyone can do it. I still see that it needs some kind of creative thinking. How would I approach the problem that my creators are not good enough with the help of AI? How can I improve it? Right. So I think there's still a breaking point in many very technical brains to actually get the idea. Okay, I jump into GPT and put in this information and I'm getting some new creative ideas back, because the way you ask the GPT, the way will be the output. And I think many people lack the idea of how they should ask GPT to get a proficient output. You very often get just very generic stuff out of it if you don't train it or give a proper prompt into the tool. And I think there's a lack very often for technical brains. This is what I see at least.
Yeah. I mean, it's only gonna get easier, right? Looking at what happened in the last year. But yeah, usually I try to really use it as kind of like someone to learn with, that I can ask any stupid question and don't be ashamed about it, that I don't know it yet. And like really I try to always ask it to create like basically like a course for me where it trains me on the things that I'm trying to learn for this. So if I'm looking into storytelling, then I rather tell it, hey, don't give me the solution, rather kind of tell me like what I should learn here. So I give you the information, then you rate it. And then over time you can get better at these things, I think. So like that kind of, I got really interested in like frameworks and like techniques of like storytelling and ads that way. I wouldn't say I'm necessarily the most creative person that is super good at then making a video or like really thinking about what the scene needs to look like. And that's why in the end I tell people to work like with influencers, creators that are doing video content. But then I really try to understand like how do the metrics that I look at in Ads Manager map to what's happening in the video. And like, yeah, that's where oftentimes the disconnect happens. You have like, maybe in the hook, it's still easy to say, okay, like we have 3 seconds, we have a certain visual, and that's just attention grabbing, then the hook rate is good. But usually the other metrics like hold rate or what influences click rate, how's that different on a per placement, that can get a bit messy. And that's where I think it really makes sense to like dive in and make sure you bridge that gap, because oftentimes that's also where then a creative producer can't help. Like they are missing that critical view on the metric side. So they might know how to make a really good video, but also they can connect it back directly to a certain metric. So it's good if, as a marketer, you try to like really at least know the basic frameworks of how an ad could be told, like problem, agitation, solution is like a basic, but there are tons of others. And these things it doesn't take like forever to learn that. And that's just super helpful, because it will help you quickly see patterns where it's like, okay, product was introduced way too late in the video, hold rate is low, meaning people just don't get to where the app is actually going. Of course, then the down funnel can't work. So you want to be able to quickly spot these things. Maybe I will also just do that in a few months from now, but for now, that has definitely benefited me a lot.
You're churning out a lot of nice secrets here. I think the approach that you described, like instead of asking for the straight solution, asking for the way how you get there and how can I get better in finding the solution myself, or can understand the framework behind it better. I think this is something 95% of the people wouldn't even think of. So I really think this actually makes the difference between a good marketer and an exceptional marketer, right? So I think there's a reason why you're overbooked probably as a consultant. Just a little compliment, Max.
Yes, also it comes from still being optimistic about that AI won't do everything of my job, and it makes sense for me to learn these things, but let's see.
Talking a little bit about back to Meta, maybe comparing small and mid-sized budgets. We often get the feedback from clients when we get onboarded, like, yeah, we made it work when it's small, but as soon as we are scaling, Meta fails. Do you think this is Meta's fault? Is it client's fault? Is it creator's fault? Or is it just not possible to scale Meta?
It is possible to scale Meta, and I've seen it scaled. And I mean, yeah, kind of the most I saw spend like was close to like the 2 million a month when I was still in gaming, and I know other accounts run at like 10 million a month. So it is possible. I think what oftentimes is, or like there are a few things happening throughout the life cycle of an ad and an account that in the end will always create these breaking points where things kind of work at 20K a month, and then you go to 50 and it doesn't work anymore. And then that will happen all the time. As soon as you crack the next stage, you're trying to scale and then you reach another plateau. That's just how it goes. So don't expect to ever be done with your work and then you can just infinitely spend money. In the end, I think some of it is inbuilt by how Meta runs ads and how they're telling us to run ads. In the end, they're really pushing for consolidation. By now, they're saying, hey, throw everything into an Advantage Plus campaign, put in 50 ads, and then we do the job. But what then happens is oftentimes your spend goes to 2 or 3 ads, meaning it's very, very concentrated, 50% plus on one ad. And again, that one ad might be a short form video, 15 seconds, which then mainly runs on Instagram Reels, where it finds a specific audience. Oftentimes that's a bit younger audience on Reels. And it's really, in the end, a narrow targeting. Creative is targeting. And if you only have one creative, that means you have a narrow targeting. That's oftentimes overlooked, I think, because most of the accounts are targeting broadly, and then they think, wow, like I have a reach of like 200 million people in the US. I must be able to scale this infinitely. But then if your ad like speaks to a specific problem and it runs on a specific placement, it's gonna get quite small, the reach. And if you then only run that one ad, things get expensive as you're trying to scale, because in the end, there is not unlimited scale within that audience. So what you as a marketer need to figure out is, how do I diversify my account? And in the end, develop a bunch of different marketing messages tailored to different angles that I can like tackle the problem with that my product is solving. How can I then apply these different angles also to different creative formats, so that, for example, again, a video would run on Reels, but how can I make it into static that might perform better on a Facebook feed? You want to diversify also in terms of like the flows you're using. I mean, quiz funnels are like the hot topic right now. They are optimized for a web conversion event, and even just by using a different campaign type, which is here a sales campaign and not an ad promotion campaign, you will access different ad inventory, because people like Meta pre-selects people saying, those are the people that click on kind of web products, those are the people that try to click on app products. So you're accessing a different bucket. So over time, as you scale, you need to, in the end, grow your account structure and diversify more and more. And that just takes time and work. And that's usually where you kind of scale the one thing that's working, notice, okay, that's the limit. And then you kind of have to figure out what's the next thing I can layer on top based on what I learned. And that's possible, but it's not easy. And Meta oftentimes makes it, at least the way they communicate it, I think it's oftentimes not realistic. Like you can't consolidate fully and expect to reach a broad addressable market. Maybe they could make it happen, but the way the algorithm works right now, it just doesn't do that.
I mean, we very often are faced with clients that think like, okay, I'm spending, I don't know, 200,000 a month. I need to launch more channels. Is that a thing? Like, my feeling is, instead of launching more channels, they should rather launch more different ad products or different targeting or different creative production pipelines whatsoever, to actually scale Meta probably to 2 million instead of 200,000. How do you see that? Launching more chats or getting better?
I mean,
on
of
Meta?
course, I'm a bit biased because I do Meta, but I would tell people also the same. Like, rather, like if you have product channel fit here and you're able to run at 200K with a good profit, then I think it's going to be a lot easier for you to take that to 400K than to find another channel where you can spend another 200K and at a similar profit. Because different channels just work totally differently. You will need a new creative production pipeline for that channel. Then the algorithms are different. You need to figure them out. It's going to take you a while. So kind of sticking within that Meta ecosystem, while then rather figuring out what's an additional creative type funnel messaging we can layer on top, usually makes it a lot easier, because you have testing processes in place, you know what you're doing, you know how the algorithm will react. And usually I see like that pays off much quicker than the other way around.
Yeah, the thing is, very often probably there's a little bit of a bias on client side as well, because they very often launch with Meta. Meta succeeds very quickly in many cases, and then they think, okay, if I launch another channel, it will also immediately perform. But that's just plain wrong assumption. It needs a lot of more work with most of the channels, and creates a lot of complexity in-house very often, right? So
that also, right? I mean, as soon as you have two channels, you need to figure out like which one actually performs better as your data comes in blended. You might need an MMP, you are gonna have to deal with scan, while like this match of like having one channel is just beautiful. Like you launch something, you see it in blended numbers, and you can attribute that back to the channel. It means a lot less work on all this other stuff, which is not going to deliver any profits. Like you figuring out attribution is worthless in the end. It just means that you can be sure you're not like breaking performance in some places. So yeah,
to be fair, we have seen all of the cases, like also launching a new channel, it immediately performs. Launching a new channel and it doesn't perform at all. You need 3 months to make it work, and then it works. So we have seen all ways happening here. It really depends a little bit on willingness on client side to invest into the complexity a little bit. So I'm not negating the opportunity to launch new channels from my side. But yes, I'm with you. Master Meta first. You probably have more fun with that. When you actually,
some channels come as like a natural add-on. I think like Apple search ads just make sense.
Yeah, sure.
As you are driving like a ton of brand search with your ads as well, and then competitors will jump onto that. Like if you don't protect your brand keyword as you scale Meta, then someone else is going to scoop that up. So that makes you start the channel either way, and while you're on it, you can also start targeting a few like of the most relevant keywords, and then usually kind of it develops from there anyways. But yeah, don't make the jump too quickly. You don't want to be spending 200K in like 4 channels. Like you rather want to be spending 200K on one channel, really know what you're doing. And then if you see an opportunity in some places, then that might work. I mean, for example, if you already like ramped up your GC production and you're working with a creator anyways, then that creator might be very good at making TikToks. And then that's just kind of a natural synergy where you already have like part of the production pipeline built. You're still going to have to learn the channel, which means like dealing with a different attribution system, which means oftentimes much quicker creative fatigue on TikTok. But like always try to find these synergies as you layer things on, and don't just like wildly test channels, because oftentimes really testing a channel and being able to say this is going to work for us or not is in most cases going to take a while. And then the question is like, do you have the time and money to do that investment, or rather scale where you already know what you're doing?
Absolutely. I mean, you can of course also hire experts for that. So here's an agency that can help you with that. But you are absolutely right. The Apple search ads defending brand terms is an interesting case. Probably could fill an entire podcast only talking about this arguing if that makes sense or not. One take I can share here was from a client that we had once, because at the same time you usually run also competitor search terms, and they are usually very expensive and don't drive the ROAS that you need versus the investment that you make. And the argument here from client side was, if it's so expensive for us to run on competitor terms, so it's also extremely expensive for the competitors to run on our brand terms. So we can basically stop everything. So either they just spend a lot of money and are not profitable on them, so let them do that. Another client was saying, we just need basically unlimited budget and a super low bid on defending the brand terms to make sure that it's definitely expensive for the competitors to enter our brand terms, right? So I think both are right in some way. I would probably argue you should always run brand terms with a strategy of high budget, low bid, and just to make sure, basically.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not bidding, then that's going to make it cheaper for the competitors to bid on it, and then it might be working out well enough for them to do it. I try to check kind of what are my what are the biggest bidders on my brand terms in like an ASO tool, and that if they're relevant, then I definitely want to protect. But I've also seen cases where the money was wasted. Like when I worked at Blinkist, we could scale our brand search, brand protection campaigns infinitely because Audible was bidding on them, and they didn't care at all. They were bidding and they were spending as much as they could. And like even in just a single market, we can spend up to like 2K a day just to protect our brand term. And we tested that incrementally, and it didn't make a difference at all. Like basically, all of that money would have come in even without us bidding, just because people looking for a book summary are not gonna they're gonna download Blinkist and not Audible. So in the end, yeah, make sure you're not wasting money on some big brand bidding on your terms while they don't care. Might even happen through discovery campaigns where like Apple just adds in random terms like your brand keyword with big advertisers that like a transportation app or something bidding on a audio app, and they don't even look into it and care. But yeah, in the end, as soon as there's a relevant competitor that seems to have figured out they can buy your traffic profitably, you need to kind of push them out of that auction.
I see it the same way. Yeah, you're right. Talking about Meta again, SK Ad Network versus AEM. Maybe before you share your take on that, can you quickly describe the difference between the two so the audience also understands what we are talking about?
Yeah. So AEM as an aggregated event measurement is Meta's probabilistic on platform solutions. So they attribute traffic basically based on fingerprinting. They don't call it fingerprinting. There's no documentation on it. But in the end, you are passing identifiers through the Meta SDK like user agent, IP, and then Meta tries to match back that user to the people they've seen on their platform. It has been getting better over the recent years, and by now, most of the accounts I see are using that kind of attribution just because it takes away some of the pains of SK Ad Network. Scan is Apple's solution, and it's deterministic. Apple is the one actually sending out the attribution postbacks telling people who converted, but it's aggregated. It has a postback delay. There's privacy thresholds, meaning if you don't reach certain traffic volumes, then you don't get a postback, and hence discrepancies to what's actually happening tend to be quite high. Like 40-50% is pretty usual due to these limitations, and therefore AEM is just favored by most of the people because it comes in immediately, and it tends to be also more accurate if you set it up properly. There is a lot of wiggle room in what is properly, so I've been digging into that a lot lately with advertisers looking into how are their SDK events actually triggered, which third parties are involved, is the code clean. I'm not a coder, I don't look at the code, but I tell them, hey, can this be simplified? And oftentimes telling them simplify this already leads to kind of better attribution, because if there's a lot of logic involved saying, hey, first this needs to happen, then we look at this, and only then the event is triggered, that often means events aren't triggered, or Meta at that point isn't able to access the relevant identifiers kind of in the time frame that they need them in. So there's wiggle room, but mostly AEM will attribute better than Scan out of the box, and that's why it's used a lot in the accounts I'm seeing, and it's also performant. I think there's still a time and place to use Scan. I mean, definitely you want to set it up and have that as an additional reporting layer so that you can cross-check performance. I mean, even just knowing, hey, AEM always reports 20% better than Scan, and then tracking that difference can mean you, for example, spot an attribution error if it happens, because if then the difference changes drastically from one day to another, something's going on. Also, Scan, as I said, is deterministic and sent by Apple, meaning that it's something that you can then use to also compare the results from different channels when you build your value modeling. If you only look at the platform itself, in the end, Google will make up its own conversions, Meta makes up its own conversions, and that's really hard to be kind of your source of truth. So you want to have Scan as that additional one. But for optimization, I tend to see AEM kind of being the most important one right now, while I haven't tried Scan 4 yet. So that's just been rolling out to Meta ads as well, which means Apple has been upgrading their framework. There is still delays and privacy thresholds, but now you are going to have more detailed reporting up to creative level, while right now it's only on a campaign ID level. So there has been improvements, and it could be worth even testing again, optimizing for these events. What I've seen before is that oftentimes, due to receiving data in different ways, a scan campaign would go after a different audience than a AEM campaign. I've tried for a while running them simultaneously for that reasons, again, diversification, but it's just a pain. Then you have like two types of reporting. One is delayed, the other one isn't. It just creates a mess, and it wasn't really worth that mess just for that kind of little bit of incremental scale I could achieve through it. Yeah.
Yeah, we are sometimes forced to look into so many different tables, which are supposed to report the same things, but it's so different. And then you really are lost in translation, basically, because you just don't know what decision to make on a campaign level or something. So I tend to agree that when you say single source of truth, I'm doing meta only, for example, I decide to go only on AEM. It's probably the best way forward to manage your campaigns at the end of the day. There's a new kid on the block, AppStack. What's your our friend Lucas? What's your take on that?
I actually haven't tried it yet. I mean, I got an intro from him a while back, and I mean, I think it's really cool that he's building this and challenging kind of the MMPs and being the only ones to handle scam postbacks. And like, if that is now available at like a much lower cost, where you have kind of all your scan data combined in one place, I think it's very much needed. On the other hand, like for my clients, oftentimes it's not super relevant because they are oftentimes the ones working with 1-2 channels. Apple Search Ads is reported properly anyways. So I haven't been in need for like a kind of standalone scan solution to this point. But generally, I feel like, I mean, he's super knowledgeable, and I really feel like it's cool that he's kind of taking this up.
Yeah, super smart dude. I didn't know if I shared that, but a long time ago I wanted to hire him. He went another way, unfortunately. But
Okay.
now he's building his own thing. It's super interesting to see, and I'm also looking forward to see how it really looks like in real life when using it. So to the audience here, AppStack from Lucas Moscom. Have a look what that is. It's complementing a little bit SK Ad Network and competing with the ad network's attribution. It's a little bit complex to explain. Educate yourself or contact us later for a little deep dive here. The follow-up question here for me, incrementality. This was a buzzword in the last 1 or 2 years. How do you see that? Incremental from our, for example, had some traction on the market. Then AppsFlyer and so on, they also developed their own incrementality software. How do you see that? Do you use that on a day-to-day basis in any form or shape? How do your clients work with that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't use any of these third-party solutions really, just because, again, I'm working with more like mid-sized developers. Oftentimes, we can just do this on our own, and like in the end, that's also how we then cross-check if, for example, how efficient does AEM attribute. In the end, we run incrementality tests, set up a few markets where we have very little baseline in, and just look at, okay, when I'm launching campaigns, how much does my baseline move? How much is meta reporting? And get an idea of like the incremental uplift and how much of that is actually then also captured by the attribution. So that's the kind of incrementality test I'd be running. And also like something similar would be then for if you want to figure out if your brand protection campaigns on Apple Search Ads are incremental. If they're spending a decent budget, you could be looking into, let's switch them off, look at how that moves the baseline, switch them on, and see if you're actually able to make more money than you're spending on them. But that's as far as it goes for me. I haven't tried these incrementality third-party tools, which I think become a lot more relevant once you are live globally and you have a baseline everywhere. You have 6 channel spending and everything is fluctuating, and then it's not as easy to just switch things on and off. Fortunately, I kind of work with simpler setups most of the times, at least. Yeah.
We very often look into these things and also use the different third-party tools. Personal opinion, it very often just creates more complexity. There's just another table, another dashboard you have to look into. It's a headache. So certainly it has a reason why it exists, and certainly it can identify patterns in your spend, where you are wasting money and where you shouldn't spend money. But again, it's also an investment in terms of analytics capacity to just understand what you're actually looking at, right? So, I mean, it sounds so easy, incrementality. If you spend money, does it increase the total company revenue or not? But when you have a couple of channels running and an influencer, and maybe there's some PR suddenly happening or someone is tweeting about it, these are things you don't have under control very often, and you don't know how to read them into the incrementality tools, right? So yeah, it's not that easy as it seems to be using a third-party tool very often, right?
Totally, yeah. I just started working with one bigger app that is really like very, very good at influencer marketing, meaning we have all this kind of traffic coming in from different channels. People post, it's not tracked in a proper way, meaning there's all this traffic. It's not really classified properly somewhere. And now if we try to launch Meta on top of this, it's really hard to just figure out, like, are we actually making money up right now? So we are kind of trying to apply things that we learned from the onboarding survey, but then also people like the influencers are posting on Instagram and on already, meaning there is a large number of people coming in answering that anyways, not so much on Facebook. So that gives us a bit of like a kind of a survey answer that is more reflective of meta traffic. We're trying to layer on like CPPs as custom product pages from Apple as like a way of measurement, while they're not perfect as they don't capture view through traffic. Again, it's just an additional way of showcasing, hey, these are at least the people that click through on the app and then add and installed on the App Store to capture, like, look at some of that revenue capture. But yeah, it gets messy as you're bigger. So definitely not, it's easier said than done if you're working with, like me, just usually one channel, like post something and then you're going to see it. For most apps, that's not the case. Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah. Marcus, was an extremely interesting talk. I think there were really some interesting insights that you've shared.
Great to hear.
Using the user reviews for ChatGPT and stuff. I mean, these are things many people just don't think about. And I think this is some valuable knowledge that has been shared here. Thank you so much for that. Really appreciate that you are so open, transparent about your ideas and work that you're doing. So to the audience, if you want to hire a very competent and exceptional marketer for your meta and attribution questions, Marcus is definitely one of the most influential people from the industry that I know, apart from the famous people like Thomas Petit and Lucas Moscon and some other folks. Where can people meet you, actually? You're in Berlin, no?
Yep, I'm based in Berlin. If people are around, always happy to grab a coffee if I can make time. I became a dad 1.5 years ago, so things
congratulations,
are related these days. But yeah, otherwise, always happy to kind of grab a coffee with someone because I'm a consultant. I don't have a team that I work with here in Berlin, so it's always cool to check in with people. And then I'm definitely going to be at a promotion summit in December. Otherwise, I'm not doing any kind of foreign conferences this year because I wanted to limit the travel a bit. And otherwise, feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. That's the best place. Yeah, follow my content. It's a bit less right now because of the parenting thing, but I'm hoping to ramp up soon again once she starts daycare.
Wonderful. Marcus, thank you very much. I wish you a great day. Thanks for joining us today. To the audience, you're at Marcus. Reach out to him. He's very open to have a chat. And of course, me too. Thanks for listening. Take care, guys.
We're here to boost your growth, marketing tips, fun and chats. Tune